This video includes 7 of the best non-fiction books I have read with the purpose of expanding the audience's mind with these fundamental and landmark texts. These texts include the work of Nietzsche, Jung, and Freud. Having read all of Nietzsche and all of Jung's most acclaimed texts, I can vouch for the quality of these books and these authors. First text is Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. It's a philosophical novel presented as the teachings of the prophet Zarathustra, inspired by the ancient Persian figure. After 10 years of solitude in the mountains, Zarathustra descends to share his wisdom with humanity. Central ideas of this text include the death of God, the decline of traditional religious and moral frameworks. He also develops the idea of the Übermensch, the Superman, as humanity's goal, someone who creates their own values beyond conventional good and evil, and the need to overcome humanity itself, which is portrayed as a bridge between animal and the overman. The book explores the will to power, eternal recurrence, the idea that one must affirm living the same life indefinitely, and critiques of religion, democracy, and the herd mentality. Written in a biblical, poetic, and often symbolic style, with discourses, parables, and songs, it is one of Nietzsche's most influential and literary works, despite being challenging. The next text is On the Genealogy of Morals by Friedrich Nietzsche. This is a polemical essay in 3 parts that traces the historical and psychological origins of moral concepts to question their value. In the first essay, it contrasts master morality, noble, strong, life-affirming values of ancient aristocrats, where good meant powerful, with slave morality, born of resentment among the weak and oppressed, especially via the Judaism and Christianity, which revalues humility, meekness, and pity as good and strength as evil. In the second essay, Nietzsche explores guilt, bad conscience, punishment, arguing they arise from internalized instincts of cruelty, when societal constraints suppress natural aggression. In the third essay, Nietzsche examines the aesthetic ideal, self-denial as in priests and philosophers, and its role in giving suffering meaning while ultimately critiquing it as life-denying. The work uses a genealogical method to show morality as contingent and power-driven, not absolute. The third text is Aion, Researches on the Phenomenology of the Self by Carl Jung. This text is a major late work which explores the archetype of the self, the totality of the psyche, beyond the ego through the lens of Christian symbolism and the Christian Aion, which is a 2,000-year increment of time. Jung discusses key concepts like the ego, shadow, anima, and animus, and the self, using Christ as a symbol of the self. It examines the problem of opposites, especially good and evil, fish symbolism, Christ and the devil, Gnosticism, alchemy, and the shift in psychic development during the Christian era. The book culminates in reflections on psychic wholeness and the structure of the self. Most notably, this text explores the openness to narcissism personality spectrum through the symbolism of the Leviathan in the Bible's Revelations text. It is a dense and scholarly book which integrates psychology, mythology, and religion. The Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche is a fierce polemic against Christianity and Christian morality. Nietzsche argues that Christianity is a life-denying, decadent force that inverts natural values. It glorifies weakness, pity, and suffering, while condemning strength, nobility, and self-affirmation. He contrasts the historical Jesus, a figure of inner peace and non-resistance, with the religion built around him by Paul, which he sees as promoting resentment, guilt, and otherworldliness. The book calls for a transvaluation of all values, championing the will to power and a return to healthier, more aristocratic instincts. It is a sharp, aphoristic, and provocative, aimed at freeing higher spirits from Christian influences. I especially like this book for its sarcastic and almost black humor style. The fifth text is Liber Novus, also known as the Red Book by Carl Jung. This text was published after Jung's death from papers found in his study. This text is Jung's private illustrated record of his confrontations with the unconscious following his break with Freud. It is a large calligraphic folio with visionary paintings and texts, structured like a prophetic or biblical work. Jung records active imaginative experiences, dialogues with inner figures, such as his soul, Elijah, Solomon, his serpent, and the devil, as he seeks to reconnect with his soul amid modern spiritual alienation. These themes include the rebirth of God within the psyche, individualization, archetypes, and the integration of opposites. It serves as the foundational nucleus for much of Jung's later psychology, including the collective unconscious, highly personal, artistic, and esoteric. It is both a psychological document as well as a visionary art. This text is primarily pictures, paintings that were completed by Carl Jung. The sixth text is Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard. This is a philosophical meditation on faith using the biblical story of Abraham's near sacrifice of his son Isaac. Kierkegaard contrasts the knight of faith, Abraham, who suspends the ethical and universal for a higher religious duty via the teleological suspension of the ethical and the absurd, with the tragic hero. Faith involves infinite resignation, followed by a paradoxical movement of receiving back what was sacrificed, and this is a quote, on the strength of the absurd. The book explores the incomprehensibility and terror of true faith, critiquing the comfortable, rationalized Christianity. It is a poetic, dialectical, and existential text. The seventh text is A Confession by Leo Tolstoy. It is an autobiographical spiritual crisis narrative. It was written by Leo Tolstoy in his 50s, where he describes his descent into existential despair Despite his success as a writer, family man, and aristocrat, the inevitability of death made life seem meaningless. He critiques science, philosophy, and his former pursuits. Then he turns to the simple faith of ordinary peasants for insight. Rejecting rationalism, he finds meaning through a renewed personal relationship with God and the life of faith, beyond organized religion's hypocrisies. The work uses the fable of a man in a well who's clinging on to a branch being gnawed on by mice for dear life, with a dragon below him in the well. The branch has a drop of honey on it. Tolstoy uses this symbolism to illustrate the human condition. It marks Tolstoy's shift towards radical Christianity, pacifism, and social reform. In this text, Tolstoy admits to many of the horrible things he's done in his life, including murder, killing people in duels, and mass murder of innocent civilians in his time during the Napoleonic Wars. Another consideration is Civilization and Its Discontent by Sigmund Freud. In this text, Freud begins by questioning whether happiness is truly attainable. He suggests that humans naturally seek pleasure and avoid pain, but reality constantly frustrates these goals. Civilization protects people from violence and hardship by enforcing laws, morality, and social norms, yet these same restrictions limit personal freedom. The central idea in this book is that civilization depends on people sacrificing instinctual gratification, and that sexual desires are redirected into socially acceptable activities such as work, art, and intellectual pursuits, a process Freud calls sublimation. Freud identifies the superego as the internalized voice of society. It acts as an inner judge, criticizing thoughts and actions that violate moral standards. The stronger civilization becomes, the stronger the superego becomes, increasing feelings of guilt and anxiety. Ironically, the very moral progress that makes civilization possible also makes individuals feel more psychologically burdened. Freud also examines religion, arguing that it functions as a psychological comfort rather than an objective truth. He believes religious beliefs help people cope with suffering by providing meaning and protection against life's uncertainties, but they also reinforce obedience to social norms. Toward the end of the book, Freud introduces the conflict between two fundamental drives: Eros, the life instinct, and Thanos, the death instinct. Freud says that civilization constantly struggles to strengthen Eros while restraining Thanatos. This conflict can never be fully resolved, which is why discontent is a permanent feature of modern human life. Overall, I've read all of these texts and I recommend all of them very highly. The only text I have not read is Civilization and Discontents by Sigmund Freud. But this text was recommended because it complements both Aion and some of Nietzsche's work. Freud and Nietzsche and Jung all had disagreements, and so their texts together might provide some insight. And that's all I've got. Thanks.